Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Hong Kong and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last few years, a good few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are just very solid all round, although my go-to beers from this brewery tend to be their lagers because I think they're very strong in these particular style categories. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from this brewery before. It's one that I know they can do very well, but also a style category that I've not had from these guys in quite some time, if memory serves me correctly. Now, this particular beer also has a little bit of a twist to it that I haven't had from this brewery before, and also one that I've not had within this style category for quite some time, if memory serves me correctly. But it's also a little bit of a special occasion beer for this brewery as well, and it is supposed to be pretty damn good actually. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to Hong Kong Island. To be specific, we're going to go to Wong, Chuk, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Young Master Brewery. So this particular beer is simply called, in English, the 8th anniversary beer, but I saw that it was called like Ban Shui, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the Cantonese. Probably not, because it's an almost impossible language. But yeah, the 8th anniversary beer from Young Master Brewery. This one is an 11.11% bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout brewed with cherries and a little bit of whiskey. So yeah, this should be pretty awesome. This is another beer that I picked up from the Chim Sha Tsui branch of Wine Rack. Big shout out to Millie, of course. She's awesome. I always chat to her when I'm in there a little bit. But yeah, they had a couple of bottles of this one remaining, and I was just very curious about it, so I thought, you know, bugger it, why not? It was a little bit pricey, but I thought, you know, this could make for a really interesting review. So Young Master Brewery's 8th anniversary beer, I think, you know, we're reviewing this one with about 2 years age on it, so yeah, it should be in really good condition actually. So let's crack on with this one then and see what it has in store for us. I think this is only the second Imperial Stout that I've reviewed from Young Master. The very first one was the Hak Mo Shun, if I'm remembering the name correctly, from back in like 2018, 2019, something like that. So yeah, this should be really interesting. But let's crack on with this one then, as I said, and see what it has in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Young Master Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Hong Kong playlist, along with a number of other things that's been added to quite regularly, of course, since I am now based out here in Hong Kong. And yeah, do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on at the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Young Master Brewery once again then. So, Young Master Brewery, as I've mentioned to you before, was founded back in 2013 by Rohit Dugar, who is originally from New Delhi in India. But he worked in New York for a number of years, and then he moved from there to Hong Kong back in 2011, and he was working in the finance sector for Goldman Sachs. But having been exposed to craft beer during his time in America, he was kind of inspired to start his own company, and so he decided to quit working in finance and found his own microbrewery, and you know, safe to say it's gone pretty well for him. So he was joined at the brewery in the early days by the German brewer Ulrich Altbauer, who had quite an extensive experience of of brewing in China, and he was the master brewer until he sadly died in 2016. But the current brew team is Edwin and Brian, both of whom have worked for the brewery for a good number of years, and they also worked under Ulrich as well. But the first brewery these guys had was in Appleichau, which is a little island just off the southern coast of Hong Kong Island. They had a facility there which had a 10 hectolitre brew house, and this was acting as their main production until mid-2016, and then they opened up a new brewery in Wong, Chuk just over the water, with a 40 hectolitre brew house from GEA in Germany, as well as having a larger barrel area and also a fodder for producing sour beers. And they were actually the first brewery in all of Asia to have one of these kind of Belgian style oak fodders, so they were very, very pioneering back in those days. These days they have several tap rooms and restaurants. This includes TAP in Mong Kok, the Ale Project. There's Second Draft at Victoria Park, which I do recommend you visit. That's probably my favourite of the Young Master venues. There's Pub 1842 in Central as well, and they've also got the Guild Bar down in Tanjong Pagar in Singapore as well, which has got a really interesting bar, so do definitely go and check that out. But they also previously had a TAP branch in Chung Wan, which is to the northwest of Kowloon, and they also had Alvy's in Kennedy Town over on Hong Kong Island as well, which served some really, really nice pizza, and I would recommend that you check that out. But today, these guys are the largest craft brewery by volume in Hong Kong, and also the most decorated Hong Kong craft brewery as well. But as of June 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 280 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they now employ 20 people. Probably the beers you are most likely to come across from these guys would be the Pilsner, which is sold in Circle K outlets all across Hong Kong. They do release monthly beers through Circle K as well, which are always quite interesting. And yeah, the Pilsner, the 1842, and I think the original Pale Ale as well are widely distributed through different supermarkets too. But yeah, like I say, Young Master are a very, very well respected brewery and the biggest by volume craft beer producer here in Hong Kong too. So yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself before we open it up. So like I mentioned to you earlier, this one comes in at 11.11% ABV. The reason for that is that their anniversary date is the 11th of November, so hence the 11.11% ABV. But I'll just read to you the little blurb on this beer from the Untappd page, because it's actually not on the bottle. So it says, our anniversary on 11/11 is an occasion we fervently look forward to every year. A ritual we particularly look forward to on this occasion is the annual release of our anniversary beer. While always a decadent and cellar-worthy limited edition brew, this year's version is extra special. A lavish bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout, Ban Shui, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, as I say, probably not, is aged on a bountiful amount of cherry puree and finished with a restrained addition of whiskey. Luscious and full-bodied, this beer will inspire the kind of contemplation everyone must do as we begin a new year and a new chapter. So I have to say, that does sound pretty nice actually. So yeah, I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, it has the traditional Chinese characters on the front there, the Ban Shui, and you can see the Young Master Brewery symbol there as well. You can see the pants, as I think most people kind of call them, and there you can see the English just 8th anniversary beer, a barrel-aged Imperial Stout brewed with cherries and whiskey. Notice that it says whiskey with EY, meaning that it will not be Scotch whiskey, otherwise it would be WHISKY. So yeah, there's also a bottle cap on this one, which I don't think I've seen before from Young Master, so that is definitely worth keeping, so I will definitely be doing that. But yeah, this is a 750 milliliter bottle. I bought this one, as I said, at Wine Rack in Tsim Sha Tsui. I think this one cost me 300 Hong Kong dollars, but it was a kind of fuck it, why not moment, to be honest. So yeah, that translates to roughly £30 sterling, maybe about 33 euros, something like that, and somewhere in the region of like 35, 36 American dollars. But yeah, like I said, it was a case of fuck it, why not? But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I have to say, I'm just very, very curious about this one. So let's do it. Oh, nice little bit of smoke on the opening, but I'm not sure how much of that you're going to see with the white background. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. That looks very, very nice. So I think we've got maybe about just over a third of the bottle out into the glass, but I have to say that looks pretty damn nice actually. So before the head completely disappears, you can see that this beer is poured with a lovely kind of quarter finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of medium tan head. This one, you can see it's kind of foamy at the bottom, but some kind of bigger soapier bubbles just kind of coming above that. And there's a few sort of islands of foam just sitting on the surface of the beer there, but that is just fading away to be pretty much nothing beyond that. But yeah, you can see the foamy edge around this one is pretty nice, and that is retaining pretty damn well actually. But yeah, pardon me, colour wise, this beer is pretty much what you would expect of an Imperial Stout. So yeah, I would describe this as being a lovely kind of dark ebony rosewood colour. If I shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of a kind of natural haze to it, which makes me think there's probably some wheat involved in this one, because you know, if you've got oatmeal or wheat in an Imperial Stout, it will be, you know, you can see it's got that kind of natural sort of matty type colour to it, whereas some of them can just be very bright but also kind of clear, but not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the surface of the beer there as well. But yeah, all in all, it does look pretty nice actually. But yeah, in terms of what you'd expect from an Imperial Stout, this one is pretty much bang on the money in terms of its appearance. So yeah, I do like that about this one as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else we really need to say about the appearance of this one, to be honest with you. It is what you would expect from the style. So let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then, and just see what it has in store for us. So yeah, I'm curious about this, definitely. This is quite interesting, this one, because it's very, very smooth. And you have to remember, I think, just going by the year, this beer, if it's 2013 they were founded, this beer is going to be from 2021. So it's got about 3 years of age on it, and you can kind of smell that sort of silky smoothness, that sort of silky chocolatey dryness coming out of this beer already. But you've also got the kind of cherry fruitiness in there, but you've also got just that little bit of you've just got a little bit of the whiskey coming out of it too. So it's a very, very nice smelling beer in that sense. For me, it's proper old school. It's kind of a mix of like RIS and like a kind of oatmeal stout in a sense. It doesn't come across as being too aggressive, if that makes sense. So somewhere between being an old school oatmeal stout and also being like a nice kind of RIS as well. So yeah, all in all, the aroma of this beer, I think, is really quite nice. Where do we start with this then? This is lovely. I will say it's absolutely beautiful. So for me, the backbone of this beer, it really gives you everything you'd want. There's a bit, you know, chocolate, bit of roastiness, bit of fruitiness, and just a little bit of smooth hoppy character, even at 3 years old. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, you have that roasty, toasty, slightly kind of well-fired bread crusty character there. That is the backbone of the beer. I would be willing to bet that this beer has some sort of Carafa malt in it. You know, they like their German ingredients. Carafa is a trademark malt type, malt variety of the Weiermann maltery in Bamberg. in Franconia in the northern part of Bavaria in Germany. So yeah, the way it's kind of comes across, you've got that bit roasty, toasty, well firedness coming out of it, but it's also kind of distinctly smooth at the same time. So you have this lovely sort of slightly dry rye bready character on top of that, but it's also a wee bit like a kind of dry chocolate sponge. There's a lot of that coming out of this one. So yeah, toasty, well fired bread crust, certainly a little bit of woodiness in there. The rye bready characters as well. Above that, you have a sweet kind of wholemeal brown bready character coming out of it too. And then you can smell, above that, you can smell the sort of cherry character coming out of it. It's almost a bit like a kind of, could you say like a sort of fruit roll type bready character that's coming out of this one, like that kind of brown rye bready character that's got the cherries or the raisins or something through it. That's the kind of note that I'm getting out of this one. But there's definitely some nutty notes in there. Like I said, the almond or pecan-y type character. Then, so yeah, sort of almondy, pecan-y type note. You've also got the, above that you start to get the chocolatey characters out of the beer. So for me, this beer, it has a more sort of cocoa nibby dryness to it, which I find quite interesting. But the actual percentage of cocoa, there's definitely some milky chocolate character to it, you know, a sort of 30-40% cocoa type note. But there are some elements of a slightly darker chocolate in there, you know, 60-70% cocoa. I wouldn't go much higher than that, in all honesty. So yeah, dry cocoa nibs, 60-70% dark cocoa chocolate, and also a more milky 30-40% cocoa chocolate as well. Above that, you start to get some brown sugary notes, and for me, the brown sugary character in this beer is quite interesting because it has a little bit of that sort of leathery note to it. And two of the things you can do to play with Imperial Stouts is that, you know, you can either do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you these more complex, leathery, brown sugary flavours and aromas, or you can do like a kind of double mash kind of quality to them. So if you do the double mash, it's going to give you a very big, thick, sticky sort of mouthfeel. So I'm curious to see how this one turns out when we taste it, and we can tell you exactly what's going on. But yeah, this one definitely has a bit of that cocoa nib and the drier chocolatey notes in there. Of course, the chocolate is going to get drier the older the beer gets as well. We have to bear that in mind. But with the brown sugary side of things in this one, there is a little bit of that leathery, chewy sort of thing. There's a sort of treacle molasses type note, sweet caramel, and then there's also that little bit of McVitie's, kind of a McVitie's digestive biscuit as well. So a lot of kind of bit of toasty brown sugar too. So I think, yeah, leathery brown sugar underneath, a bit of a toasty brown sugary layer, bit of treacle and molasses, and then yeah, straight up sweet caramel. Yeah, on the malty side of things, I don't know if we really need to say too much more on that, to be honest. You can smell the cherry adjunct in this one. You can also get a little bit of the whiskey out of it, but I don't think those are overly prominent, to be honest with you. I think we'll get more of those in the actual flavour of the beer. Now, when it comes to the hoppy side of things, at 3 years old, a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one, and you know, you could age this beer further if you really wanted to. But that said, you do still have a little touch of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of herbal character as well, and you can get a little touch of floral note and also a wee bit of grassiness as well. So yeah, there's a wee bit of all of that coming out of this one. So for me, there's a little bit of that green component there. When you sugar it up especially, you get a wee bit more of it, but like I say, it takes a bit of a backseat to everything else. The Imperial Stout is a more malt forward style of beer, as you know. But I don't think we need to say too much more about that green component. So to round off the aroma, the fruity side of things, you can definitely smell the cherry character in the background there, but above that, you've got a wee bit more going on. I mean, when you smell the aroma of the beer, you have a little bit of yeah, you've got a little bit of a, like a kind of, there's a wee bit of a figgy note in this one. There's also a little bit of like blackberry and maybe black currant in there. So yeah, figs, black currants, blackberries and cherries. I think that's a fair mix of the fruity character coming out of this one. So yeah, I think we've described the aroma pretty nicely at this point. So we should go on and just have a taste of this beer and see what it's all about. But always take a bit of time to enjoy that. That's half the experience when it comes to craft beers and whiskies and sakes and stuff like that. So yeah, this one is the Ban Shui, an 11.11% Imperial Stout, the 8th anniversary beer of Young Master Brewery in Wong, Chuk here in Hong Kong. An Imperial Stout with a little bit of whiskey and cherry added into it and bourbon barrel aged. So let's try it. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Looking forward to this. This will be good. Oh yeah, I have to say that's pretty damn good actually. You know, one thing I was a bit worried about with this beer when I read what it was, I wondered just, you know, was the balance going to be right? Because when you add cherries into an Imperial Stout, you know, the kind of sourness and sharpness you can get from those can be a little bit overpowering, but I think they've managed to just balance everything out really nicely in this one. And to be honest, knowing Young Master, I should have kind of expected that of them. With the quality of the beers, like these guys, as I say, they're no, for me, they're my kind of go-to lager brewery here in Hong Kong. But I should expect a good quality beer from them. But still, this one did surprise me. This is really damn good. So just going to say massive thumbs up to them. This is probably I'd probably go as far as saying this is maybe the most impressive beer that I've tried from these guys. Isn't my favourite, that's a wee bit hard to judge, in honesty, because I do love their Oktoberfest März, and that beer's got a bit of a special place in my mind, but this is pretty damn impressive, I will say that. That really is good. Yeah. So yeah, I paid quite a little bit for this beer. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. This is definitely worth trying if you come across it. But yeah, first impression of this one, I think this is a kind of straight up. I think it is a straight up RIS, but the bourbon barrel aging is obviously mellowing everything out. The addition of the cherries is doing that, and the whiskey is giving it that wee bit more depth as well. But yeah, old school RIS at this point in time, really lovely and smooth. It is absolutely worth trying. So yeah, let's just break this beer down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. Middle third of your palate then. So the backbone of this beer, you can smell that, or you can taste, sorry, that lovely smooth American oak coming out of this one. As I've explained many a time before, the American oak is a different species of tree from the European oak, and it just gives you that little bit more of a kind of sweetness, to be honest with you. So yeah, lovely smooth backbone of American oak there. As you move further forward, you get that little touch of vanilla out of it on that middle third of your palate, and then you can feel that nice kind of bourbon spirit layer coming out of this one. And the bourbon, of course, bourbon for me has always got a little bit more bite to it, and it's just that little bit sweeter than Scotch whiskey, I would say. So yeah, that lovely kind of bourbon spirit layer is sitting on top of the wood in this beer as well, and it's absolutely lovely. We need to talk about impact flavours with this beer as well, but we'll come to that a wee bit later on. But yeah, above the bourbon spirit layer, you start to get, you can feel there's a little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust backbone. I'm pretty sure there's some sort of carafa malt in this one. But yeah, you can feel that roasty, toasty, well-fired black malt in there. It does have a little bit of harshness to it, but at the same time it has that smoothness you would expect of carafa. And there's just something in my memory that's saying that that's what's in here. But above that bread crusty note, you've got a more dense and slightly sweet oily rye bready character in there. Above that, you start to get the more kind of rye bready, wholemeal brown bready character coming out of the beer. And I think above that, there's a sort of like dry chocolate sponge type note to the beer as well. So yeah, you've got rye bread, you've got the bread crust, the rye bread, the wholemeal brown bread, and then a more kind of dry chocolate spongy type character coming out of the beer. The chocolate sponge note, I think, is the kind of product of this beer being 3 years old. You know, it's kind of evolved. That's a flavour that's probably evolved out of the beer a little bit more, because you know these beers do give you that big kind of silky smoothness the longer you keep them. But within that, you do get little elements of like almonds and pecans. There's a little bit of nutty character coming out of the beer as well. So above that kind of chocolate spongy layer, you definitely get the chocolatey side of the beer. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, there's a wee bit more of a there's a little bit more of a kind of dry cocoa nibby chocolatey character. And as you come further forward from that, you can feel, you sort of get like a 70% cocoa chocolate character in the middle of that middle third of your palate. And then as you push further forward, it gives you a wee bit more of a milky character. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So you've got this nice layer of like dry chocolatey character coming out of this one. But let's focus on the brown sugary side of things with this beer. So the brown sugary side of this beer is quite nice, but it does take a wee bit of a backseat to other things that are going on. So above the chocolatey layer that I've just talked about, you get this layer of like leathery brown sugar, and usually that's an indicator of a slightly longer wort boil in Imperial stouts like this. So yeah, you've got a layer of leathery brown sugar, then maybe it's a slightly toasty brown sugar above that, and in the dead centre of your palate you can feel this kind of oily treacle molasses type note. But sitting above that, you've got the sharper cherry characters that are obviously from the cherry adjuncts in this beer. And the cherries are really quite nice and quite juicy, but they're, you know, Stensbeer cherries are from Copenhagen, from Denmark, are the ones I was really familiar with in recent years. They're not anywhere near as sharp and kind of sour those. The cherries in this one are really kind of juicy and quite well rounded, in fact. So yeah, I think at this point we've covered the middle third of the palate, and that is obviously the most complex part of the beer. You can feel some of the whiskey character just coming out of this one the further into the aftertaste that you go as well, and it comes across as more of an Irish whiskey, and honestly it's got that slightly bigger dryness to it than the Scotch whiskey has. So yeah, I'd be curious to know what whiskey has actually been added into this. But yeah, that's the middle third of the palate. Now remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. We're going to focus on the back third of the palate now, and quite often the flavours you get there are similar to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of that kind of bready build up in there. The base of that is of course the kind of rye bready character. Then you get the wholemeal brown bread and the sort of chocolate sponge and the dry cocoa nibs above that. But the base of that back third of your palate is of course the woody character from the oak. That's a little bit drier. You can feel the bourbon spirit layer in there as well, which is a little bit more kind of roasty and toasty. And then above that you get the bread crust, of course, the charred bread crust, of course, the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, the wholemeal bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, and then the more kind of you get the more you get a little bit of the more kind of sponge cakey, dry chocolate sponge cakey layer there as well. But you can feel above that some of the cocoa nibs, the drier cocoa nibby characters, and the leathery brown sugars just creep over the top there. Then you've got all the yeasty character coming out of the beer. So let's look at that yeasty note in there as well. So the yeasty side of this beer is quite straightforward, I would say. It just adds that little bit more depth to the beer. You can feel that really nice, dense, sweet rye bready character in the middle. Around it you've got a more kind of dry rye bready note. Then the bread crust around the side is more like a kind of chocolate puddingy type quality. And you do get, the further you go into the aftertaste of this beer, it does give you a little bit more of that impression of, like, you know, Scottish chocolate pudding. That's really what it reminds me of. So yeah, sweet wet rye bread in the middle, more of a kind of drier rye bread around the edge, and then a sort of chocolate puddingy character around the edge. And that yeasty character, as I say, sits on top of everything else on the back third of the palate. So definitely back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, the flavour just condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer. As I said earlier, I think this beer is probably from 2021, so a lot of the hoppy character has dropped out of this one. Moreover, it's barrel aged, so you are you know, sacrificing a little bit of the hoppy bitterness in this one to get the infused flavours and things. But nevertheless, you do get a little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate there. As you move further forward, it's got a little touch of herbal character as well, and then as you push further forward, there's a little bit of floral aromaticity and some nice grassiness around the kind of front curve of the tongue layer as well. But obviously the longer you keep this beer, the more that is going to drop out. Yeah, front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate is kind of what you'd expect. You've got the rye bread in the base. You've got the kind of wholemeal brown bread on top of that, and a bit of the kind of chocolate spongy cake in there as well. The base of that front third of your palate, yeah, you've got the woodiness in there, the bourbon spirit layer, then you've got the toasty well-fired bread crust, the rye bread, and a bit of the brown bread. I don't get so much of the kind of cakey character on that front third of your palate, but then yeah, above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. But we also need to talk about impact flavours with this beer, as I said. So let's look at that impact flavour first. So like I said, the cherry notes that you get out of this beer are really, really nicely balanced, because the beer does have that little bit of impact flavour to it, like I said. So when you take this beer in, you are going to get that sharpness and that juiciness out of the cherries, but it's not overpowering, if you like, and you can feel, sitting on top of all those malty characters that I talk about, there is just that layer of cherry, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the fruity esters from the hops come out of this beer. I suspect it's probably like Galena or something that has been used for the hopping of this beer. It seems, you know, kind of American, kind of old school American, this Imperial Stout, with regard to its fruity character. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, above the cherry layer, you do get a little bit of that sharper kind of juicy plum. So yeah, there's a little bit of like raisiny sharpness in there. Underneath you've got the juicy plum, but as you move further forward, you can feel that sort of datey character coming out of the beer. As you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, there's definitely a kind of figgy character coming out of it, and you also have a little bit of a you know, there's just a little bit of a kind of sultana kind of note coming out of this one too, which I find really, really interesting. But yeah, as you move further forward into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's more along the lines of like a kind of, there's a bit of a black currant in the base. There's also a wee bit more of this kind of Christmas puddingy type note pushing its way out from under the fruits as well, which I find really interesting. But yeah, a little bit of a black curranty character in the base, and more of that, of a kind of dried pear and sort of sultana type note out of this one. The fruity side of this beer is really, really interesting. But yeah, more and more of this kind of Christmas pudding type character coming out of it the more that you drink. Yeah, this is very, very interesting, I have to say. I think Young Master have got the balance of this really nice, and I'd be very curious, I would have been very curious to try this one on tap when it was released. I wonder how much of the balance that this beer has is due to the age. But yeah, great beer this one, and definitely no regrets about paying the price for it that I did. Absolutely worth trying if you do get a chance at it. But yeah, I think we said everything we need to about the flavour. Let's round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, yeah, kind of bottom end of full bodied, I would say. The carbonation is very, very smooth, and this one it's got that lovely, silky, smooth mouthfeel to it. A lot of the smoothness and silkiness you get out of this beer is because of the age. But the backbone of this beer, as I say, it's got that lovely, smooth, woody character to it. Obviously, the mouthfeel feels a little bit lighter because it is barrel aged. You sacrifice a bit of the mouthfeel for these kind of infused flavours. But yeah, you've got roastiness in the malt base, you've got a lovely smoothness in there. You do get a wee bit of leatheriness out of this one into the aftertaste too. And as I say, you've got this kind of cakey, Christmas puddingy type note in this one. The brown sugars are very dry and very sweet. A little bit of a kind of chocolatey dryness out of it as well. I think it's the more that you drink of this one, this beer shows more and more of a dry character. In terms of its IBU, it's got to be about, maybe 50 IBUs. It's not going to blow the head off you in terms of like roasty, toasty bitterness or hoppy bitterness for that master. It's more the kind of dry sweetness that gives the impression of the beer having a little bit of bitterness. But the fruity side of things is very nice. You do get a little bit of that sharper, juicy cherry on impact, but it mellows out very, very nicely actually. And yeah, I think it's the whiskey that's given the beer that sort of Christmas puddingy type flavour that I've been talking about in this review. But all in all, really wonderful beer. This one, wouldn't expect any less of Young Master in all honesty. So if you come across a bottle of this, it is absolutely worth trying. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. All I can say is this is a wonderful beer and you should have a go at this. So yeah, this was the Ban Shui, probably pronouncing it wrong like I said, but this is the 8th anniversary beer from the wonderful Young Master Brewery in Wong, Chuk here in Hong Kong. An 11.11% ABV Imperial Stout, bourbon barrel aged with cherries and a little bit of whiskey addition to it. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Young Master Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. In the meantime, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next one. Ciao just now.